In this video, we're talking about 4 shocking assisted living visitation rules that catch people off guard after they've already signed the contract. These aren't rumors, these are real policies that exist in many communities, and if you don't know about them ahead of time, you can feel blindsided. Let's start with the first one, because this surprises almost everyone. Some assisted living communities have strict visiting hours. I know what you're thinking. I'm not in high school. Why would there be visiting hours? But in many places, there are. Your children or friends may only be allowed to visit during certain time windows. That might be 9 to 6 or 10 to 7. And if someone wants to stop by in the evening after work, they may be told to come back tomorrow. Now, imagine this. Your granddaughter has a school play at 7 p.m. She wants to come see you afterward, excited and glowing just to tell you how it went. But the front desk says visiting hours ended at 6. That may sound small right now, but when you're living there, those moments matter. Some communities enforce these hours strictly, others are more flexible. The key is this: you must ask. Don't just assume because it feels like your home that people can come and go whenever they want. Ask, what are the official visiting hours, and how often are exceptions made? The second visitation rule that shocks many seniors is guest sign-in and approval policies. In some assisted living facilities, every visitor has to sign in, show ID, and sometimes even be pre-approved. On one hand, yes, security is important. No one wants strangers wandering the halls, but here's where it becomes tricky. In certain communities, if someone isn't on your approved list, they may be turned away. Let's say an old friend from church is passing through town and decides to surprise you. If they're not on the list, they might not be allowed in until staff can reach you, confirm, and sometimes even verify identity. That can feel frustrating and, honestly, a little embarrassing. And here's something else most brochures don't clearly explain. Some places limit how many regular visitors you can list for after-hours access. That means you may have to choose who gets easier access and who doesn't. Before you move in, ask directly, do I have to pre-approve visitors? Can I update that list anytime? Are there limits? Don't feel awkward asking. This is your life, your relationships. You deserve clarity. Now, here's the third rule that really catches people off guard: overnight guests. Many seniors assume that once they're in assisted living, their adult child can stay the night if needed. Maybe you're not feeling well and you want your daughter nearby. Maybe your son is visiting from out of state and wants to spend extra time with you. In some communities, overnight guests are restricted. Some don't allow them at all. Others allow them only a certain number of nights per month, and some charge additional fees. Think about that for a second. You're paying thousands of dollars per month to live there, but if your loved one wants to sleep on the couch for 2 nights, there might be paperwork, approval forms, or extra charges involved. This becomes especially important during times of illness or emotional stress. When you're vulnerable, you want the comfort of someone you trust nearby, not a rule book standing in the way. So ask this clearly: can I have overnight guests? How often? Is there a fee? And don't accept vague answers like, we handle that case by case. Ask for specifics. Because here's the truth: assisted living is a business, a caring business ideally, but still a business, and businesses run on policies. Now, before we go further, if you find this kind of information helpful, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I make these videos for seniors who want the real story before making big life decisions. The more informed you are, the more control you keep. You worked your entire life for your independence. Don't hand it over simply because you didn't ask a few uncomfortable questions. And that brings us to the next visitation rule, one that many people never even think to ask about. Another rule that often shocks seniors is how visitation can change during special circumstances. And that phrase sounds harmless, doesn't it? Special circumstances. But in many assisted living communities, that wording gives management broad authority to restrict visits whenever they believe it's necessary. Now, of course, we all lived through the pandemic, and many communities locked down completely. Families were waving through windows. Grandchildren couldn't hug their grandparents for months. That experience showed everyone just how quickly visitation can disappear. But here's what most people don't realize. Even outside of major health crises, some communities temporarily suspend or limit visits during flu season outbreaks, staffing shortages, renovations, or internal investigations. Sometimes it's a floor-by-floor restriction. Sometimes it's the entire building. You might think, well, that's for safety, and sometimes it is. But the real question is, how often does this happen, and how long do those restrictions last? Imagine moving in expecting weekly Sunday dinners with your family in the common dining room. Then one winter, there's a flu outbreak. Visits are limited to 30 minutes. No communal dining, no gatherings. That can stretch on for weeks. Before signing anything, ask directly, under what conditions do you restrict visitation? How often has that happened in the past 2 years? How are residents notified? You're not being difficult, you're being informed. And here's something else that deserves your attention: where visitors are allowed to spend time with you. Some assisted living communities restrict guests to certain areas. They may allow visits only in common rooms during specific hours. In some cases, visitors are discouraged from spending extended time in your private apartment, especially if care services are being delivered. Think about that. You might assume that once you're paying for your own unit, it's fully your private home. But depending on the contract and level of care, there can be policies about supervision, staff access, and how guests interact with you in your own space. For example, if you are receiving medication management, staff may require access to your room at scheduled times, even if family is present. Some communities don't allow guests to assist with personal care tasks, even if it's your own child helping you dress or organize medications. Now, that can make sense from a liability standpoint, but emotionally, it can feel like a loss of autonomy if you weren't expecting it. So ask this clearly. Are there any restrictions on where my guests can visit me? Can they spend time freely in my apartment? Are there any limits on how long they can stay during the day? The more specific your questions, the clearer your future will be. There's another piece that people rarely think about until it's too late: romantic relationships and companionship. This one can be sensitive, but it's real. If you meet someone in the community and begin a relationship, some facilities have policies about opposite-sex overnight visits, shared rooms, or even door locking rules. In certain places, staff may enter rooms periodically for safety checks, regardless of whether you have a guest. You're an adult, you've lived a full life, but once you're in assisted living, your privacy can look different than it did in your own house. I've spoken with seniors who were surprised to learn that even locking your door for extended periods can trigger staff check-ins. The intention is safety, but the effect can feel intrusive if you weren't prepared for it. That's why it's essential to ask about privacy policies related to guests, not because you plan on doing anything dramatic, but because you deserve to know how your personal life will be treated. And here's the heart of it all. Visitation rules aren't just about logistics, they're about connection. They're about whether you can hug your grandson whenever he drops by, whether your best friend can sit with you late into the evening talking about old memories, whether your daughter can stay overnight when you're scared after a medical procedure. When you tour a community, everything feels warm: smiling staff, fresh cookies, brightly lit hallways. But policies live in the contract, not in the tour. Slow down enough to read that section carefully. Ask them to show you the visitation policy in writing. Don't rely on verbal assurations, because once you move in, it's much harder to renegotiate those boundaries. Now, let's talk about the final visitation rule, the one that almost nobody brings up during the tour, but can affect your sense of control more than anything else. It has to do with who ultimately has the authority to limit your visitors. You might assume the answer is simple. I do. After all, you're an adult. You're paying to live there. It's your space. But in many assisted living communities, there are clauses that allow management or sometimes even family members with certain legal authority to restrict who can see you if they believe it's in your best interest. Let's unpack that carefully. If a staff member believes a visitor is upsetting you, asking for money, interfering with care, or creating conflict, they may step in and limit access. Again, sometimes this is absolutely necessary. Financial exploitation of seniors is real. Emotional manipulation happens. Protection matters. But here's where it gets complicated. What if it's simply a disagreement? What if you have a strong-willed son who argues with staff about your care plan? What if you choose to give a gift of money to a grandchild and someone decides you're being pressured? What if you reconnect with an old companion and your children don't approve? In some cases, if a family member holds power of attorney, they may be able to request that certain visitors be restricted, and depending on the contract and your cognitive assessment, the facility may comply. Now, I want to be very clear. This isn't about assuming bad intentions from your family or the community. Most people involved truly want to protect you, but protection without clarity can feel like control. Imagine inviting a friend over, only to be told later that management received concerns and future visits will require review. That can feel deeply unsettling, especially if you don't fully understand why. That's why this final question is so important before you move in. Under what circumstances can my visitors be restricted, and who has the authority to make that decision? Ask them directly. If I am mentally competent, do I retain full control over who I see? If my family disagrees with one of my relationships, how is that handled? What documentation would be required to limit access? These are not dramatic questions, they are responsible ones. Because here's the bigger picture. Assisted living is about support. It's about help with daily tasks. It's about safety. But it should not quietly strip away your ability to choose who sits across from you at dinner, who holds your hand, or who makes you laugh on a difficult day. Connection is not a luxury at this stage of life, it's oxygen. And when you evaluate a community, you're not just evaluating the food, the activities calendar, or the cleanliness of the hallways. You're evaluating how that place handles your relationships. So let's bring this together in a practical way. Before signing anything, ask for the visitation policy in writing. Read it slowly. Highlight sections about visiting hours, guest approval, overnight stays, temporary restrictions, privacy checks, and authority to limit access. Don't feel rushed. If someone says, "Oh, don't worry about that," that's exactly when you should worry about that. Bring a trusted friend or advisor with you, not just to look at the decor, but to listen carefully to how questions are answered. Vague responses are a red flag. Clear, written answers are what you want. And remember this, choosing assisted living does not mean surrendering your independence. It means adjusting how that independence is expressed. The goal is support, not control. You have lived decades building friendships, raising families, nurturing connections. Those bonds are part of your identity. They don't expire the day you move into a new address. If this video opened your eyes even a little bit, I'd love to hear from you. Have you toured a community where the visitation rules surprised you? Are you currently living in assisted living and dealing with restrictions you didn't expect? Share your experience in the comments. Your story could help someone else avoid a painful surprise. And if you value straight, practical conversations like this one, the kind that go beyond the brochure, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. We create these videos for seniors who want clarity, not marketing fluff. Big decisions deserve real information. At the end of the day, this isn't about fear, it's about empowerment. The more questions you ask now, the more peace you'll have later. You deserve safety, you deserve dignity, and you absolutely deserve the freedom to welcome the people you love into your life at any age. Here's to making decisions with your eyes wide open and continuing to live boldly, connected, and in control of your own story.